So, a very good morning once again, dear students of class 9. And let's continue once again with the short story, An Angel in Disguise. And we are going to do the second and the final video for this short story. So, on your screen, once again, you can see the scene of Mrs. Jane Thompson and little Maggie, the girl who is crippled and who has been adopted by the wheelwright, Mr. Joe Thompson. And eventually we shall see how Mrs. Jane Thompson accepts this girl and she becomes an angel in disguise for this childless couple. So let's go to once again the page where we had left off. We had left off in our previous video on page 81, the first paragraph. So we'll continue from after the first paragraph on page 81. So I'm scrolling up. In the meantime, all of you can take out your textbooks and you can just follow the text from your textbook, or you may follow it from what you get to see on the screen. I have the pages of your textbook on the screen coming up now. So here you can see where were John and Kate? Where were John and Kate? Asked Mrs. Thompson. And then Mr. Thompson clarifies, Farmer Jones tossed John into his wagon and drove off. Katie went home with Mrs. Ellis, but nobody wanted the poor sick one. Send her to the poor house was the cry. So the husband explains to the wife that the other two siblings of this little girl, they were taken away by two different neighbors from the same village, but there was nobody to take little Maggie, and so I thought I should bring her home. Why didn't you let her go then? What did you bring her here for? So Mrs. Jane Thompson, as she has a very vinegar temperament, she says, then why didn't you let her go to the poor house? When people were already suggesting that she should be sent to the poor house, you should have let her go. Why did you bring her here? So Joe says, she can't walk to the poor house, said Joe. Somebody's arms must carry her, and mine are strong enough for that. So I decided for that task, my arms are very strong. So that's why I brought her with me. Then why didn't you keep on? Why did you stop here? Demanded the wife. So if your arms are strong and like you are claiming that she deserves to go to the poor house, then why didn't you take her directly to the poor house? The poor house means the orphanage. So you should have taken her there instead of stopping over here and putting her here in our cottage, inside our room. Who told you to stop here? You should have taken her directly to the poor house. So Joe Thompson says, because I am not apt to go on fool's errands. The guardians must first be seen and a permit obtained. So I cannot simply just go to the poor house. I have to take proper permission. I have to ask the guardians. Who are the guardians? Guardians are the ones who manage this poor house, the ones who own this poor house or the orphanage. So I have to talk to the competent authorities, the ones who run the orphanage. Without talking to them, how can I directly take the girl to the orphanage? First, I have to obtain the permit. Only then can I take her there. There was no gainsaying this. So, when will you see the guardians? Was asked with, you can say, irrepressible impatience. So, Mrs. Jane Thompson, the next question that she asks is, okay, fine, you did not take the permission from the guardians and so you did not take the girl to the poor house, understood. But when are you going to take the permission? Tomorrow. Why put it off till tomorrow? Go at once for the permit and get the whole thing off your hands tonight. So why are you keeping the work pending till tomorrow? See, it is early morning when the funeral was organized, and after that the child was brought home And now Mrs. Thompson is asking her husband to go to the guardians of the poorhouse, obtain the necessary permits, and then get rid of the child, put her in the poorhouse by evening, and finish it off. Jane, said the wheelwright, with an impressiveness of tone that greatly subdued his wife. I read in the Bible sometimes and find much said about little children, how the Savior rebuked the disciples who would not receive them. So, Joe Thompson talks about the Holy Bible, and he gives reference to how children were stopped from coming to Jesus, and Jesus noticed this happening, and he told his disciples to allow the children to come to him because he loved children. And that is exactly what he is mentioning here, that even the Savior, Jesus Christ, was fond of children. So if religiously also one sees, then one must remember that Jesus loved children, and we, being God-fearing, devout Christians, we should also remember that children are like angels. They are God's blessings, and when they come to us, we should not refuse them and reject them. So this is what he tells his wife. How he took them up in his arms. He talks about how Jesus took the children up in his arms and blessed them, and how he said that whosoever gave them even a cup of cold water should not go unrewarded. So this is what Jesus had said, that whosoever gave even a cup of cold water to children when they were thirsty, then they would be blessed by God, and their kindness will not go unrewarded. Now, it is a small thing for us to keep this poor, motherless little one for a single night, to be kind to her for a single night, to make her life comfortable for a single night. Joe Thompson knows how exactly to talk to his wife. The voice of the strong, rough man shook, and he turned his head away so that the moisture in his eyes might not be seen. Joe had tears in his eyes when he was reasoning with his wife. He was feeling very sorry that his wife was not able to understand the feelings of sympathy, pity, and kindness with which he had brought little Maggie home. Mrs. Thompson did not answer, but a soft feeling crept into her heart. So suddenly there is a complete change coming over Mrs. Thompson. From her rough and maybe ill-tempered mannerism, she is turning into something tender. Look at her kindly. Jane, speak to her kindly, said Joe. Think of her dead mother and the loneliness, the pain, the sorrow that must be on all her coming life. The softness of his heart gave unwonted eloquence to his lips. So the softness of Joe's heart made him speak so eloquently, pleading in favor of Maggie, little Maggie, with his wife. Mrs. Thompson did not reply, but presently turned towards the little chamber where her husband had deposited Maggie, and pushing open the door, went quietly in. Joe did not follow. He saw that her state had changed, and he felt that it would be best to leave her alone with the child. So he went to his shop, which stood near the house, and worked until dusky evening released him from labor. A light shining through the little chamber windows was the first object that attracted Joe's attention on turning towards the house. So at the end of the day, Joe goes to his workshop. His workshop is adjoining his cottage, and he spends the entire morning and the day till evening working in his workshop. He did not come home, and when it started growing dark, His day's work was over. He started coming round the workshop and towards his cottage. And he could see that there was a light shining through the little bedroom window. It was a good omen. A light was inside that room where the little child had been deposited by Joe in the morning. So who do you think had put that light? Obviously Jane Thompson. If she seriously disliked the presence of the child in her house, then she would not have put that light in that room when it had started growing dark. The path led him by this windows, and when opposite, he could not help pausing to look in. It was now dark enough outside to screen him from observation. Maggie lay a little raised on the pillow with the lamp shining full upon her face. Mrs. Thompson was sitting by the bed. Now this is the scene which I showed you in the thumbnail in the beginning of today's video and also in part 1 of this video. She was sitting by the bed talking to the child, but her back was towards the window, so that her countenance means face, was not seen. From Maggie's face, therefore, Joe must read the character of their intercourse. Intercourse means conversation. He saw that her eyes were intently fixed upon his wife. Whose eyes? Maggie's eyes. That now and then a few words came as if in answers from her lips. Whose lips? Maggie's lips. That her expression was sad and tender, but he saw nothing of bitterness or pain, which means that Jane was talking gently to the child. That's why there was no sign of sadness or pain in the expression of the child, because Joe was looking through the window and Mrs. Thompson's back was turned towards the window, so he could only see Maggie's face. A deep drawn breath was followed by one of relief as a weight lifted itself from his heart. On entering, Joe did not go immediately to the little chamber. Which chamber? The bedroom where Maggie was with Mrs. Thompson. His heavy tread means the heavy footsteps of Joe, about the kitchen brought his wife somewhat hurriedly from the room where she had been with Maggie. Joe thought it best not to refer to the child, nor to manifest any concern in regard to her. "How soon will supper be ready?" he asked. "Right soon," answered Mrs. Thompson, beginning to bustle about, busily moving about the kitchen to get the supper ready for her husband. She is a very dutiful wife. The moment she heard his footsteps in the kitchen, although he did not go into the room and ask her for supper, she heard his footsteps in the kitchen and realized that her husband was back home and it was supper time. So he has returned after the day's work, so he must be hungry. So as a responsible wife, she immediately comes into the kitchen, and when husband asks her, she says that it will be ready soon, beginning to bustle about. There was no asperity in her voice, meaning to say she was not the same Mrs. Thompson, the angry Mrs. Thompson, as she had been in the morning. After washing from his hands and face the dust and soil of work, Joe left the kitchen and went to the little bedroom. So, you see, Joe is very caring about the child. He takes precaution not to go into the room in his dirty, all day's work kind of look. He washes himself properly, and so that there should be no germs, nothing, because he knows that he is going into the room where in the bed is a sick child. So very carefully, just like a father would do if his child was sick, the same way he washes, cleans himself properly, and then he goes to the bedroom. A pair of large bright eyes looked up at him from the snowy bed. So the bedclothes were white, and these large bright eyes are the eyes of little Maggie. looked at him tenderly, gratefully, pleadingly. So there was a kind of tenderness in her look, there was a kind of gratitude in her look, and there was a kind of request in her look, pleading, as if pleading without even saying anything. She seemed to be pleading that please don't let me go, please don't send me away to the poorhouse, please let me stay, I want to be here. How his heart swelled in his bosom. So, whose heart? Joe's heart. So his heart started, swelling or increasing in size, beating with love and with tenderness for this little child. So the fatherly instinct is actually kindled in Joe, just as the motherly instinct had already been kindled in the heart of Mrs. Joe. With what a quicker motion came the heartbeats. Joe sat down now for the first time, examining the thin frame carefully under the lamplight. He examined the little child. She was so thin and malnourished, very delicate, frail, weak, timid and sick type. He examined the little girl under the light, saw that it was an attractive face and full of a childish sweetness which suffering had not been able to obliterate. There was a kind of sweetness, as in case of any child. This girl too had a sweetness, a childish sweetness, which despite her pain, despite her poverty, despite her sufferings, had still remained in her face, in her expressions. "Your name is Maggie?" he said as he sat down and took her soft little hand in his. "Yes, sir." Her voice struck a chord that quivered in a low strain of music. "Have you been sick long?" "Yes, sir." What a sweet patience was in her tone. "Has the doctor been to see you?" "He used to come." "But not lately?" "No, sir." "Have you any pain?" "Sometimes, but not now." "When had you pain?" "This morning. My side ached and my back hurt when you carried me." "It hurts you to be lifted or moved about?" "Yes, sir." "Your side doesn't ache now?" "No, sir." "Does it ache a great deal?" "Yes, sir, but it hasn't ached any since I have been on this soft bed." "The soft bed feels good." "Oh, yes, sir, so good. What a satisfaction!" Mingled with gratitude was in her voice. "Supper is ready," said Mrs. Thompson, looking into the room a little while afterwards. Joe glanced from his wife's face to that of Maggie. She understood him and answered, "She can wait until we are done. Then I will bring her some things to eat." There was an effort at indifference on the part of Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson is now acting. She is pretending to be indifferent towards the child, but actually she is not. She has spent the entire day talking to this little girl, and because she had earlier given an indifferent attitude about this girl to her husband, she wants to stick to it in front of him, but she cannot, which Joe can understand. But her husband had seen her through the window and understood that the coldness was assumed. It was not real coldness, it was only a pretense of coldness. She was only pretending to be cold towards the girl or indifferent towards the girl. She was not really cold or indifferent towards her. Joe waited after sitting down to the table for his wife to introduce the subject uppermost in both of their thoughts. But she kept silent on that theme for many minutes, and he maintained a like reserve. So when husband and wife were having supper together at the supper table, Joe did not say anything, but was expecting that his wife would say something about the girl, about sending her to the poorhouse and all that. So she was not saying anything, and Joe decided to keep reserved about it and not to bring up the topic. At last, she said abruptly, What are you going to do with that child? Joe says, I thought you understood me that she was to go to the poorhouse, replied Joe, as if surprised at her question. Even Joe is also acting, pretending. Mrs. Thompson looked rather strangely at her husband for sonic moments and then dropped her eyes. The subject was not again referred to during the meal. At its close, Mrs. Thompson toasted a slice of bread and softened it with milk and butter. Adding to this a cup of tea, she took them in to Maggie and held the small waiter on which she had placed them, while the hungry child ate with every sign of pleasure. So, after they finished supper, this is the food which Mrs. Joe Thompson carefully arranged for the little girl, and on a tray, waiter refers to a small tray. On that, she laid out the plates and a cup of tea also to go with that, and she took it to the little girl, and she was hungry and she ate it with happiness. Is it good? Asked Mrs. Thompson, seeing with what a keen relish the food was taken. The child paused with the cup in her hand and answered with a look of gratitude that awoke to new life old human feelings which had been slumbering in her heart for half a score of years. Half a score, 10 years. So, the motherly, tender feelings were aroused when the child answered with gratitude in her expression and in her tone of voice. We'll keep her for a day or two longer. She is so weak and helpless, said Mrs. Joe Thompson, in answer to her husband's remark at breakfast time on the next morning. So look, now it is Mrs. Joe Thompson who is saying, we will keep her for a day or two. She is so weak and helpless. Let her regain some of her strength and then we will send her to the poorhouse. So, next morning, at the time of having breakfast, this is what she tells her husband, that he must step down and see the guardians of the poor about Maggie. So, in the meantime, Joe can have enough time in hand to go and meet the guardians of the poorhouse and arrange everything so that Maggie can be sent there. She'll be so much in your way, said Joe. Just look at Joe. She will be a botheration for you. You will be troubled by her presence. Why to keep her? Today she must be gone. I shan't mind that for a day or two. Poor thing. She says, I don't mind it. For a day or two, it doesn't really matter. She's such a poor thing. Joe did not see the guardians of the poor on that day, on the next, nor on the day following. Of course not, because even Joe wanted to keep this little girl. In fact, he never saw them at all on Maggie's account, for in less than a week, Mrs. Joe Thompson would as soon leave thought of taking up her own abode in the almshouse as sending Maggie there. Within less than a week, Mrs. Joe Thompson had developed this tendency that if somebody told her that Maggie had to go to the poorhouse, she would also think about going and living there. So it came to this. So with that, we have come to the end of page 85, moving on to page 86. What light and blessing did that sick and helpless child bring to the home of Joe Thompson, the poor wheelwright. It had been dark and cold and miserable there for a long time, just because his wife had nothing to love and care for out of herself, and so became sore, irritable, ill-tempered and self-afflicting in the desolation of her woman's nature. 10 years they have been married and she has not been able to bear a child. The mother instinct inside her had never been able to come out. Her fulfillment as a woman had never been achieved. She did not feel complete, and so she became irritable, short-tempered, and she had become sore and desolate. But now, with the arrival of Maggie, what happened? Now the sweetness of that sick child, looking ever to her in love, patience and gratitude, was as honey to her soul. It was like sweet honey for her soul. And she carried her in her heart as well as in her arms. A precious burden. So, not only did Jane Thompson, wife of Joe Thompson, carry Maggie in her arms, but also in her heart. She had become very much a part of her, as though she happened to be the real child of Mrs. Thompson. A precious burden, very precious to her. As for Joe Thompson, there was not a man in all the neighborhood who drank daily of a more precious wine of life than he. So for him also, it was a new beginning of life. He was enjoying life newly and differently from the way it was before. Life was now meaningful. There was a meaning in his life. He was enjoying the wine of happiness that life was offering to him. An angel had come into his house, disguised as a sick, helpless, and miserable child, and filled all its dreary chambers with the sunshine of love. So, at the end of this story, let us remember that Maggie was not just an angel in disguise for Mr. and Mrs. Joe Thompson, who brought happiness into their sad and indifferent lives so that they achieved the fulfillment of parenthood. They had a reason to be together, to focus and shower their love, care, affection on a child, which for these 10 long years they could not do. In fact, Mr. Joe Thompson and Mrs. Joe Thompson were also like two angels in disguise for this little girl, Maggie. For had it not been for them, Maggie would have ended up in the poorhouse and could have possibly died without any love, any care, any affection. But now she also has a reason to live. And among all her siblings, she is the one who is the most fortunate. So this is where the story ends. An exceptional story. I'm sure I have been able to explain to you, and I'm sure that you have understood very clearly. So here once again on your screen is that scene where you can see Mrs. Jane Thompson sitting by little Maggie. It's an artist's illustration because this is only a fiction. That's it. With that, we finish part 2 of this video tutorial, and also the short story, An Angel in Disguise. Thank you very much.